You can't just write a mission statement and put it on the wall and be like, this is our culture. Like it needs to just organically be real. There needs to be substance and realness to it. What we really sell back is our customers' time. And we've always looked at it through that lens. And that is the differentiator. And that lens has really not shifted since the founding of the business. It's always been about that.
So what's one lie about success that you wish people would stop believing?
The blueprints that you hear from everybody about do this when you graduate, don't do this when you graduate, don't go to college, you got to write your own story and you got to just listen to yourself. So write your own blueprint, and that's success.
So Carlos, welcome to Rockstar Talent. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And quick background about Carlos Ventura, CEO and founding partner of Feast Fettle, a premier meal delivery company recognized by the Boston Globe as one of New England's fastest growing private businesses. Since 2018, he has led the company's growth from a neighborhood chef service to a vertically integrated hospitality brand, on track to exceed 50 million in annual revenue. Before founding Feast Fettle, Carlos worked at Citi, Goldman Sachs, and Deliveroo. He serves on the board of College Visions, an organization supporting first-generation college students. In 2025, just this year, he was named EY Entrepreneur of the Year in New England. Carlos, great to have you here again. And let's get started. I know there's been a lot of momentum with Feast Fettle. What have you seen be that point of growth and momentum for your team?
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that I've always viewed Feast Fettle and our business as a hospitality business, a food business. What we really sell back is our customers' time. And we've always looked at it through that lens. And that is the differentiator in how we view everything, and, how we deliver the product, how we source ingredients, how we take care of our customers. And that lens has really not shifted since the founding of the business. It's always been about that. And, I think what others sort of miss in this space or kind of go awry on is let's raise a bunch of money. Let's call this a tech business and let's just go for it. And there's obviously some winners in the space that have done that and have scaled, but I think those are the exceptions. Well, they certainly are the exceptions. What you read about is, the top 1% of the 1% that have raised enough to, I won't say monopolize the market, but close to monopolizing the market. And their strategies have shifted, right? Initially was, let's raise a bunch of capital. Let's acquire a whole bunch of customers, essentially pay for those customers by offering a discounted product or service. And then let's do this in hopes of being the number one player or number two. And, we did that that was our strategy, Deliveroo. And it more or less worked, right? Like they IPO, they recently got acquired by DoorDash. But the strategy we have here is very, very different, where it's more about the product, relying on that high level of product and service levels to fuel growth.
Yes. And certainly, as you probably have this strong belief, hey, tech is great, but if the product can't sustain longevity, then the business most likely can't sustain longevity either.
Yeah, that's right. And especially in the space, if this is a food business and we're fully vertically integrated, everybody knows the margins aren't like, this isn't a SaaS business. So tech plays a huge part of that. We've decided to build out our own in-house tech, and I don't want anyone to be confused. I'm a tech person for sure. I'm fanatical about it, but it's more about the enablement for the customer versus the business being a tech business. Every business at this point should be a tech business. I mean, and I look at the tech as one of the kind of pillars, if that's what you want to call it, or moats that we built around the business, because, you really can't plug and play a fully vertically integrated meal delivery service. Like you'll see all these other players, and I've gotten to see, some of the companies we've acquired. It's like a mishmash of just like 17 different tech platforms. And that's where the technology does come into play. It's primarily on, or historically primarily has been on, optimization, kitchen operations, logistics, fulfillment. And I think now it's shifting, more towards the customer in the sense that, obviously, yeah, we could talk about AI, I guess, forever, but it's obviously enabling new tools and services that previously were more difficult, particularly on like contextual ordering and recommendation engines. I mean, that technology is accelerating at a fast clip. And
In regards to your own success, you've been in investment banking. I'm sure you see some principles that possibly apply to different industries as you're growing Feast and Fettle and expanding, acquiring companies. Which principles do you feel apply to any industry that you've seen?
I guess from a personal perspective, especially in the realm of entrepreneurship, it's resilience. I think that's people talk a lot about it, but I don't think the word does the feeling justice. It's ups, it's downs, and you gotta just ride it out and figure it out. And also from that perspective, be a motivator, a leader through good times, through bad times. And when I think about maybe my experience as a child and growing up as like a teenager, that has actually been more valuable in being an entrepreneur. Now, experience at Goldman, experience at Deliveroo, there's like technical and contextual skill sets to Feast and Fettle. But that's industry and technically specific. I think when you go agnostic, it's more broad than that. I'm just thinking about the elements that have made, I don't even like to call it success because it's like it's not, there's no destination. It's maybe a perception of people like, hey, you're successful, but it's an ongoing thing.
You like ongoing improvement. I mean, it's definitely not smooth sailing, like you said, a lot of ups and downs. What do you do for you to remain a resilient leader and keep your team motivated? Because you're that influencer in the organization that gets everybody on board, aligned to your vision. How do you do that?
So there's things that without a doubt I was born with, characteristic. I hate that entrepreneurialism is sometimes glorified because sometimes it's like the really good entrepreneurs, there's something that's probably broken in you that actually ends up being an asset. So I had I grew up in a household with parents that were addicted to alcohol, and like I had a lot of independence, and I just grew up real fast. I had a lot of freedom. It wasn't a traditional upbringing, and it's talking about resilience and being able to like deal with emotions that like one day you're high, or not even one day, one morning you're high, and then like in the next morning you're just like you've got this pit in your stomach and you think it's the end of the world. But like going through those ups and downs as a kid emotionally, like I recognize that feeling as an entrepreneur, and at least I'm like, okay, well, this is a business. This isn't like I'm not gonna, in a different situation as a child, there's a lot more risk associated with the bigger picture. But, as an entrepreneur, it's kind of like you can keep some perspective because it's like, okay, at least I'm doing this by decision. When I was growing up, I didn't have that luxury. It was more like on me, like I had to deal with it. And now I'm proactively decide to be an entrepreneur and deal with the emotions. So I think that's huge. And I don't know how to like fabricate that or create that for somebody. And that's my experience. I know some people, a lot of entrepreneurs that I talk to, there's that common thread where like the resilience, you kind of have this chip on your shoulder, and sometimes you don't even really know why. Like you could try to do like a lot of work and understand why, but to me, it's more like those are elements that are almost necessary to really push through. And then out of that comes this extraordinary, like I'm an optimist. So I thrive when hits the fan. Like when COVID happened, no one knew what was going to happen to Feast and Fettle, to the company, to anything, but like I was in my element 1000%. It's actually like when things are going really well where I'm actually most uncomfortable. It's like not my default state of mind.
Like your programming, your wiring as a kid kind of set you up for success in a way to be this great leader, to kind of pivot and go through these tough times and figure things out. It seems like you don't get into panic mode. It's just like, hey, we have to figure this out now. And you're leading by that style versus, let's say a leader is panicking, getting anxiety, frustrated, and their emotions are all up and down. Well, then their team's not going to feel confident that we can sustain this. And then their confidence goes down, their performance goes down. So maybe direct correlation to how you are interacting with your team, how they see that you're navigating these challenging situations, it's helping your team kind of stay confident and continue to build with you without hesitating as much.
1,000. I mean, yeah, your team can read your body language, can read
Yes.
like when I'm not having a good day. I mean, it used to be a lot. I'd say relatively speaking, like we used it was the first 5 years are very, very difficult. And there'd be days I'd leave the office because I didn't want my energy to
Mm,
like negatively impact the other people.
mm-hmm.
Now the reality is I'm saying all this, but like you still have to feel it. You still are feeling it. It's not like it's because I grew up with it, it goes away. It's more like it's just more familiar. So like I've done this before. I've felt these uncomfortable feelings before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a lot of optimism that I know that it's not permanent, right? So it doesn't make it go away. Like it's not like people say, okay, like I meditate, I work out, and I know like it helps, whatever. But
Yeah.
like the feelings don't go away. It just helps you be present and address what is actually happening. Especially in America, I notice like we have this desire to want to make the feeling or the emotion go away. And like, like we could have a whole podcast about that, but like
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of that. I'm actually a fan
Yeah.
of like, no, you need to sit in that feeling
Mm-hmm.
and experience it because you get another rep with
Mm-hmm.
understanding like life. This is life. We're humans and we shouldn't always be happy. Like
Yeah.
that's not like real.
Like I agree. It's the norm to go through times of anxiety, depression, and it's not that something's wrong with you. You just have to navigate, okay, how can I lessen this? And how can I help myself? Well, regulating my body can help myself. I
That's
don't
right.
have to take pills or
That's
whatever
right.
the case is. And I don't want to get into that either, but I agree with you there. So when you're building and growing the business from just being a startup now, evolving across the US, how do you know if you have the right culture in place within your team?
So back in 2021, I brought on Kyla, our COO and head of people, and she helped me and the team scale the culture that already existed. So this is very important. You can't just write a mission statement and put on the wall and be like, this is our culture. Like it needs to just organically be real. There needs to be substance and realness to it. The words that we use, the phrases that we talk about, the way we engage and communicate and how we talk to one another, like all of that stuff is culture. And as a leader, early in my days, I was like, oh, like I was a consultant, like I'm not putting it on the wall and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, well, if you want to scale this company, there's no way you're gonna be able to like communicate that to every single individual. It needs to be a feeling, and we need to put terminology, language. She was like, the good thing is you have it. Like we just need to start extracting it, communicating it, and building programming around it. When I think about culture, I always think about like the realness of what it is, and then how do you scale that to the organization. And the best way I tend to think about culture now that we have a culture at scale, is you can identify when you have a good culture when people have like very positive or very negative reactions to their experience at the company. I think I've seen it at Gold. I think Goldman has one of the best. I don't think like when I say best, I mean like clear. When you
Clear.
walk into Goldman, it's very evident. I don't need to read a handbook. There's nothing
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know based on everyone's behavior, activities,
Mm-hmm.
communication,
Mm-hmm.
what their culture is. And you either positively react or negatively react to that. And that's okay. There's nothing in between. And I want to create the same thing here. I don't want to create Goldman Sachs, but I'm just saying I want to
Yeah.
create that clarity. The way you kind of identify, it's more about like, okay, we have this thing, we're growing it. Now, how do you identify when things are not going well? Usually at this scale, because we're not massive, when someone comes into the organization, particularly someone new in a leadership or management or supervisor role, they should maintain or uplift that culture,
Mm-hmm.
because if they don't, you can immediately see it in the team. It's very hard to manage because you've got a bunch of subcultures within the culture, and there's nuances, and it's very true. One person can spoil the pot, and you can't let that happen. And I've learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm. Have you had that one type of person that is kind of repelling is like not aligned? And how did you navigate that? Do you wish you did it differently, or how do you typically approach that when you see a lot of the people refer to it as a cancer in the organization?
Yeah.
kind of
Yes.
like spreads. And sometimes when you eliminate it, it's almost so beneficial for the whole company and you see even better results. But I would love to hear from you.
Sometimes you don't know, like, and it takes time for you to identify. Sometimes people take a little bit longer to fit in or find their place in the culture, and it ends up working out. So
Mhm.
again, going back to being an entrepreneur, you're typically talking to someone that's extraordinarily optimistic. So the people I work with directly, I'm so optimistic with everyone I work with. I'm like, I don't really care you're here. Like, I see you way up here, and I'm going to help you
Yes,
get there.
yes,
And um,
yes.
I don't know, like 50% of the time you get people there, the other 50% you don't. And sometimes it's technical skill, sometimes it's not a fit, sometimes it's a cultural issue. Ah, man, everybody says like hire fast, fire faster. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But going back to the feeling, like it doesn't feel good to fire someone. It doesn't feel good
Mhm.
to like all the people say these little sound bites. Just like you still have to do it and feel it. And we're not all these like machines with these like little
Mhm.
like TikTok clips. It's like, oh yeah, just hire fast and fire faster. Oh yeah, that's the key to success. Okay, easy. Like no, like you got to go through this and it
Yes.
doesn't feel good. Sometimes you make a mistake, you might fire the wrong person, you might hire the wrong
Mhm.
person and vice
Mhm.
versa. So when it comes to culture though, you got to make sure that you're retaining that. And usually it's a good sign if someone either enters the company and there's like a uplift or someone leaves the company and there's an uplift. That's like the sign.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure when your COO came in, your head of HR, when you started systemizing the culture, do you feel with that systemization, well, now you're de-risking kind of like a bad hire because your foundation is strong. People know what you're about. It's like very systematic. There's no black and white. It's this, where it is black and white, this is what it is. Do you feel that's de-risked quite a bit of having to kind of get rid of people that don't align?
Yeah, I think we're batting a better average, I'll say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of that. So, like, we have our values, and those values are embedded in the way recruiting team brings on new members or interviews people. Like, there's a set of values, and I think that, like, one of the things, and I could talk about this all day, the thing that continuously like is very difficult to like pick up in an interview, but we found like yellow flags over the
Mm-hmm.
years is ego. So I hate, like, everyone has an ego, but like
Yeah.
I hate when the ego takes over. It needs to sit behind like the bigger mission of the brand
Mm-hmm.
and the employees. And as a leader, like your ego, you just need to like park it. And that is so hard sometimes to suss out. It's so hard because you're not going to show that. Like in fact, like you're going to probably do the opposite in all your engagements and keep it tempered. And everyone keeps it tempered. And so, like, how tempered are you keeping it? You
Mm-hmm.
know, until you come
Mm-hmm.
into the organization. And also, like, a little ego is good because you kind of want a little edge.
Yes.
So, I like that, but that's the one thing you can't deal with it. Like, I cannot deal. I don't know how people deal with that. And I see other companies, they're super successful and like super egotistical. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'd rather just not work with those people. I'd rather have a company that's not successful and like just like be
Right.
happier. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it's one of those things that like for me is such a big.
Yeah, and with an ego, I mean, you can repel great people from joining your organization, or when they get in, they're like, I can't work with this leader. I have to leave. I love this company, but this leader is just not embodying the values that we're about. So they're forced to leave. And that happens a lot. So then your retention rate goes down because of this ego. We've definitely seen that too. But
Yeah.
that's great. So confident, maybe a good balance of confidence and humility. Is there like a question that your team asks to kind of try to dig in, or any specific like case study? Do you have a tool that we can use?
Um, the people team hates when I say this, but I always like wing interviews because I try to go down the path. Like I'll have starting points and then I try to like go down the path of the response because I'm actually just trying to stuff that out. And so like
Mhm.
depending on the responses, I will react live. It has taken a lot of like practice and also like for me to just be myself and I actually expose that. I'm like, hey, I have no agenda. I'm just gonna ask you random questions. So let's just riff. Like I always say that in my interviews. And I always start, or most of the time I start with like, okay, when you wake up in the morning, you know that feeling where like you're super excited about the work you're doing? Like, what is that? And like, talk to me about that. Because I want to like let down the guard. I want to just
Mm,
immediately like get
Mhm.
into the mindset of like, hey, let's have an open conversation.
Mhm.
And when people start opening up, it's when they start opening up and speaking honestly that you can pull out the cues. It's like, ah, there it is. There's the ego, right? Like if someone cares about their title too much, red flag.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like if someone asks too many questions about like the mechanics of like we have like unlimited PTO policy for like the business side because we're remote, we work all the time, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But like if someone has too many questions about that specific thing,
Yeah.
I'm like what are you not getting? I'm telling you that like we're super flexible. Like you
Yeah.
seem like there's these like little nuances that you can pick up, and sometimes I ignore them. Like I mean, I ignore them. I hire the person. I take the bet, and 50% of the time
Mhm.
I'm right. 50% of the time I'm wrong. But like I'm getting much better than that. Better at that. Yeah. I just try to like get someone to open up so we can
Mhm.
like we're gonna work like this anyway. So let's just start right now, right? You can see where we go with this.
That's a good point you made, Carlos. We're also huge advocates at my company, Selective Insight. Let's build rapport first versus all these technical questions because technical is great, but then if it's not aligned with your values, your culture, well, that's not going to be a great hire. That's not going to be a great leader for your other people. And the rapport is kind of like, yeah, you open Pandora's box and let's see who this person really is.
Right.
Don't just look at the resume and technical and they have to execute on technical. Well, it's a lot more than that. And technical is only one piece. So I like that you said that. Thanks for sharing. I think that will help the listeners because usually they're coming in, and I've seen this a lot. Hiring companies will come in, drill the questions on the technical. Culture is a little tiny piece. And it's like, okay, well, they check the box on all of these qualifications. They're a good fit. But what about personality? What about values?
That's everything. I mean, I'll give you one quick example. Like I have a tough time hiring technical resources. One, like I'm relatively technical. I've worked with engineers and that's great. But like I have to like those conversations I have with engineers have nothing to do with technical at all. Because I'm like, you know what? I can't even really evaluate how good you are. So I'm actually just gonna 100% focus on like culture and fit. And if you fit, I'll throw you to my engineers and then they'll like make sure like you know what you're doing, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I
Yes.
definitely think people should start with that because that's the filter.
Yes.
That's like the company filter is the culture fit.
Yes. Great. I love that you emphasize that. I know you've probably had to make a lot of changes in your organization. One is certainly, hey, how do we have our culture more systemized and ensure that as we're growing, we don't lose what we've built in a culture? What is maybe one major time that you kind of had to pivot maybe the business model or make a huge pivot in your organization? And how did it impact the growth?
So we've historically ran pretty lean. And what that means is myself as the CEO, like I think maybe I've been able to be a CEO in the past like year or two, but prior to that, it's like, okay, I was like leading tech and product and marketing. And there's been times where leadership has either moved on or we had to let go of somebody, or I'm using this as an example. Like I would step into that role, play
Mhm.
that role, invest in that team, and then hire in. And I think that that, like I have filled the gaps as the entrepreneur. And it might be like, okay, you need to be a CTO for 6 months. And like, sorry, like that's what you have to do. And I think that when people see you do that, they know you're like in it. I guess those are like kind of like leadership pivots. From a business standpoint, I think, um, man, that was such a weird time period because I'm literally like in my element, like 'cause the world's chaos. But I'm like, let's go. And we had like these daily stand-up meetings, and everyone was like scared, seriously.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, no one has to be here. We're not going to stop. We're an essential service.
Mm.
No one needs to be here. I'm not making anyone stay here. I'll pack soup every night if I have to. However, my priority is keeping everybody safe and like make sure we're all about that. But that comes first. Then comes
Mhm.
our customers, our
Mhm.
members.
Mhm.
And we started when I said that out loud, I was like, so at that point in time, we actually didn't have like free meal plans for our staff. And I said that out loud.
Wow.
And in the moment, I'm like, you know what? Like, by the way, we're all getting free meal plans because I'm like, I'm asking you guys to risk your like the uncertainty of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And like you should benefit from that as well. But at the same time, there's so many other reasons, you know, and I'm like, why didn't we do this since the beginning? Probably because we didn't have any money, but like, I was like, okay, everyone's on a free meal plan and now we've like carried that through. So it's a
Love
benefit. If
that.
you're every single person at Feast and Fettle, I think, yeah, if you work at least 20 hours a week, you have a meal plan. It's like a couple's meal plan for like 4 dinners. So you have like a meal plan for you and your family for free. I expect that because when people are consuming the product that are contributing to the product, it's a very nice, you kind of hold yourself accountable. Like
Yeah.
I eat the food, I feed it to my 3-year-old daughter. The quality better be on point. The sourcing better be on point. Like you know, like, and everyone has to consume it. And so like, and don't get me wrong, this is the food business. Shit goes wrong all the time, every week. And so having, you know, 300 other people on the ground, eyes onto the product constantly because they're consuming it is actually like ended up being like a win-win for the business, a win-win for the employees. It's just one of those moments where I was like, oh, like, yeah, like that makes sense. Like you should do that.
What a great benefit. And then the connection to your brand, your culture, your vision. I mean, when you're eating something great, it's like, wow, like the appreciation factor and the loyalty. It sounds like one of the best investments you can make in your own people.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
great.
if you feed, this is a weird thing, and I like everyone is now like on it, but like, yeah, if you eat clean, like clean ingredients, like everything else becomes simplified. Like you don't have to count every single calorie and every single macro. You feel
Mm-hmm.
better, you're more energized, you
Mm-hmm.
sleep better. Like it actually starts with the like super, super basic things. And like no one wants to hear that. Like eat clean ingredients and like exercise more and you're gonna just feel you're just gonna feel better. And all this stuff you have going on, like it all, you know, gets better together. And like when we think about Feast and Fettle and we think about the product and the service, that's actually how we think about it. Like we're here to make our product is food, but like we're giving you back the comfort and the trust. Like
Mm-hmm.
they got the ingredients, they're figuring out my allergens. Like my daughter doesn't eat this, my husband won't eat, blah blah blah. And like we're just able to sit here and actually enjoy time together because that is an emotional benefit to the family, and that is what we sell. Like that is what we want to happen. That's what we want to occur, and that's obviously harder and harder today because you know everybody's working, blah 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 blah.
Yes.
No one has time.
Yes. I know you've expanded into the Northeast, into the New York region, I think Brooklyn. Originally, you're from there, or did I get that?
I'm
Or around
I'm
that?
I'm from Massachusetts, but I when I graduated, I lived in New York City for about 5 years.
Awesome. So expanding there. Do you have plans to expand down south?
Further south, you know, we are looking at the adjacent kind of like major metros, kind of in between DC and New York City. We
Okay.
are very calculated how we expand. And what I mean by calculated is it's very, you know, adjacent market. Is it the right time? Are we able to execute the product and the service at the same quality levels? And as long as we can check those boxes, we'll continue to expand geographically. And like, honestly, I shared that I've relocated like half of my time down to DC
Mm-hmm.
because we're looking doing that pretty quickly. And it's exciting. And it's also like, when I'm there, I can't eat Feast and Fettle. So there's like this, like, you got to do this. Like,
That's
I'm very like,
awesome.
it's selfish when it comes to that because I mean, me and my family misses it now, and you kind of take it for granted.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay, as we close up this episode, a little bit more of a more sensitive question here. And I know you said, hey, success is like, hey, we're not there. It's you're always working towards something. And it's not just like, okay, this is the end of the road, I've made it. Especially with your mission of helping families, like with their time and being healthier. But what's one lie about success that you wish people would stop believing? You've mentioned a couple, but what do you think is like the biggest lie about being a leader, being an entrepreneur that is out there? And, you know, for the younger generation, we don't want them to pay attention to that lie.
money won't do anything for you. beyond a certain point. Like
Oh.
I know what it's like to have no money and be broke, trust me. And then it
Mm,
feels great when you're like, cool, I can pay all my bills. Like
mhm.
um the delta between not being able to pay for basics and able to pay for basics is huge.
Yes.
Beyond that, you're not gonna exponentially increase your happiness. You need to find what it is that makes you happy. And for me, I like to what when you ask any of my friends and my family, like, oh, Carlos is always working, blah, blah, blah. I'm playing the game. I'm having fun. I can only imagine like what Tom Brady felt like. I'm a huge Patriots fan. I can
Yeah.
only imagine what Tom Brady felt like on the field. That is what I feel like in the game of entrepreneurship most of
Mhm.
the time. Ups, downs, highs, lows. You win, you lose. Like what that is the game I'm playing. It so happened I got to be a little bit lucky, the market, like, but I still play the game,
Mhm.
and that is success. So like you got to find the game you want to play. There's no way you're going to compete if you're not playing a game you want to play. So when I was an investment banker, I was pretty good, but I looked at other people that were like they were having fun, and I'm like, oh no, like this is not fun. And so you got to recognize, and that takes time, but you got to be open to it. So what that means is the blueprints that you hear from everybody about do this when you graduate, don't do this when you graduate, don't go to college, you got to write your own story and you got to just listen to yourself. There's
Mhm.
no blueprint. Like we're all writing our own blueprint. So
Right.
write your own blueprint, and that's success. So when you can write your own blueprint and you can play your own game, and maybe you can pay your bills, like that's success.
Right. Right. And if you're not experiencing different environments, well, how do you know what game you should play? I mean, if
That's
you
right.
were not in investment banking, you would have never felt like, hey, or seen that, hey, they're having fun. I'm not having fun. I need to figure this out. I'm still success. I still am doing great, but it doesn't mean that this is the game I can play long term
That's right.
and be happy with. So finding your like happy medium, but experiencing one thing, that's like it's less likely that you would figure that out. Is what it
Right.
seems, right?
Yeah. And to younger people, like, I mean, I get a lot of calls like, oh, what's the advice of this? I'm like, you can listen to me, but like the reality is you need to find a way to like, you need to learn to listen to yourself because I don't know. I don't have the answers for you. Like you need to, that's life. Like you need to go find your own path, your own success, your own happiness. And that's the best. I mean, that's the best advice I've ever gotten. It was never like so specific. It was always the folks that were like, hey, don't worry about it. You're a super hard worker. You're going to figure this out. That was like the best advice I ever got. I'm like, oh, cool. Like I can take a breath of fresh air. Like I'm not so worried. Like that
Yeah.
is the best advice. It's just like, go do that. Get the social media and stop like
Stop
listening to all these
scrolling.
entrepreneurs that are like, making millions of dollars in 10 years and posting like you're watching highlight reels. Go live your own highlight reel.
Right. And go take some action because
Right.
just looking, scrolling, nothing is going to happen. Nothing
That's
is
right.
showing up at your door. So, yes, that's great advice. Um, Thanks, Carlos, for being on Rockstar Talent. Wanted to ensure that if the viewers want to see if your service is around in their area, where can they go to?
Yeah, you can go to feastandfettle.com. We actually show up organically now, number one for meal delivery services NYC. Thanks to you, thanks to Cook Unity for buying our brand name. But go to feastandfettle.com and yeah, we're in New England, we're in New York, New Jersey, and we'll soon be in the DMV area. Yeah, and hopefully we can, make your life a little bit easier.
Awesome, Carlos. Great to have you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.